What's going on, everyone? Thanks for tuning in to another episode of the Ducks Dish podcast. I'm your host, Max Torres, publisher and lead editor of Ducks Digest, covering the Oregon Ducks for Sports Illustrated over on Fan Nation. We got a big episode of the pod today. We are doing a little bit of a switch up, and it is going to be a basketball intensive episode because the Oregon Ducks just knocked off the number 12 UCLA Bruins at home in Matthew Knight Arena, 68-63 on Thursday night. And I am joined by Ducks Digest reporter Billy Spotz, who was at the game covering that one for us, taking in all the action and soaking it all in. Billy, how are we doing, man? And man, what a game last night.
Yeah, no, I'm doing great. Last night was probably one of the most incredible atmospheres I've seen at Matthew Knight in a while. Like, obviously, like, not having fans last year is a huge part of that, but like, just the way the arena erupted, storming the court, just everything. Like, last night was amazing. And then the energy after the fact too, kind of just like trying to make my way home with like how packed everything was. It was definitely like, you have like those like legendary memories of like being in an Oregon sports like moment. But last night's gonna be one of those ones that sticks with me for a while, especially since I'm graduating here in a couple months.
Something about playing the Bruins, Billy. I think back to Oregon versus UCLA when Dylan Brooks hit that crazy game winner in Eugene. Ducks now the winners of 4 straight against the Bruins. Kind of just wanted to get your perspective on this. We had a couple points that we wanted to maybe hit on that we discussed before we hit record. But maybe a good place to start is what stuck out to you the most from watching the Ducks take down the Bruins?
So one of the big things that's been really kind of like stuck in my mind in recent memory with the Ducks kind of up and down performances in particular has been like the 3-point shooting. And last night, the 3-point shooting wasn't fantastic. Like, watching the game throughout it, it's like, David Harmon opens the scoring with a 3 and then they go 0 for 4 for the next like 5 minutes. But they finished the night 7 of 21, hitting that pretty solid, like 33.3% clip. But beyond that, the flip side of that is that UCLA just couldn't hit anything, which, right, you look at that final score, it's only a 5-point win, but UCLA, I think, shot 4 of 24 from
20
downtown.
more shots.
Yeah, it was UCLA couldn't hit anything last night. But like, one of the big things that I was really kind of noting as I was watching that game was just the defensive intensity from the Ducks, whether it was like battling for boards or just like trying to shut down possessions they're at like any given moment. They never let up. One of the things you and I talked about was Frank Kepnong, everything that he did last night. He feeds on the energy of Matthew Knight. Like, I've seen few players do the first name that comes to mind that matches that is really like Peyton Pritchard, right? Because when Matthew Knight was roaring, like, Peyton Pritchard was just like, all right, I'm just going to score like 30 plus and it's not going to be an issue. Or like, you mentioned like Dylan Brooks against UCLA way back when. But like, something about UCLA basketball just gets like Matthew Knight roaring and gets the team to just like deliver these amazing games. Like, you even think back to the January matchup, right? The game that ended in overtime because of a horrible inbound pass. Like, there's just, I don't know, like, UCLA games are something special, like year in and year out.
Talking about Frank Kepnong, finished with 8 points for the Ducks last night, 9 total rebounds. 7 of those came on defense, which I think is really crucial because, it's not a hot take or anything super crazy to say. If you can get that defensive rebound, then you help eliminate a lot of second chance points, which I think is a metric that has kind of hurt Oregon a lot this year. And then let's see, Frank also finished with 3 blocks is what I'm seeing here in the stat sheet. Is that right? Did you see that?
Oh yeah. Yeah.
Okay.
And what's funny is like, you look at that stat line, like 893 is solid. Like, there's nothing like bad about it, but it's one of those things where you're just kind of like, oh, like, you don't think he has like the most tangible impact on the game, but like, watching that game, it felt like he was doing everything. Like, he was shutting down possessions for UCLA. He was providing all of this energy off the bench for Oregon. And again, it's like, he fed off the energy of Matthew Knight so much. So despite the fact that he only finished with 8 points, it felt like he had finished with like 20. Because like, everything he did, Matthew Knight was erupting for. Like, he hit 2 free throws and the arena made it sound like he hit a game winner. It was insane.
Well, Dana was talking about how the team really fed off of him in the first half, and he kind of carried them in the first half. So that's really big. We've kind of seen I don't know if I'd say emergence, but I feel like him and Dante have really kind of emerged in some of these past couple games, just making sure that they have a good presence inside. And then you talked about the 3-point shooting, pretty solid night for Oregon. But really only two guys that were able to consistently hit it, with that being Devion Harmon, who finished the game high at 17 points, and Eric Williams, who was actually 3 for 3 from deep, finishing with 11 total points. I think another thing that interested me about this game is it's the story that we've seen from Oregon kind of the whole season, Billy. Like, they really don't show up against some of these lower teams, but they really play up to their opponent when they're playing against some of these top dogs in the conference. We just saw it against Arizona last weekend when they lost by 3 after just getting destroyed by Arizona State. And I think Dana had said something along the lines of, after the game, talking to the guys after that Arizona game, saying, like, this is great, guys, like that we were like right there with them, but where's that kind of energy and intensity been, all throughout the season? But when you go to Arizona and you're that close with them, I hope it showed this team, another reminder that you can hang with anybody as long as you're really playing good team basketball, playing with that fire. That defensive fire is kind of what you were talking about, Billy, something that we really haven't seen consistently from the Ducks. So I don't know. It's just it's definitely exciting to see, and certainly encouraging if you're an Oregon fan as they try to turn this really up and down season around.
Yeah. And the last great stretch for Oregon basketball this season started with, again, a close win against UCLA, followed by a matchup against USC. And so the obvious hope is that they carry the momentum from the UCLA game into the USC game. And, USC just got taken to, was it double overtime? It was double overtime against Oregon State, wasn't it?
The score was in the 90s, so
yeah.
I'll double check that.
But, I think
double overtime.
Okay, yeah. With this team in particular, and like since I've been able to cover so much and been able to watch them so much, like, I try not to like get stuck in that cliche of calling it a roller coaster season, but the highs of this season have been incredible, right? That 10-1 stretch where like they only lost to Colorado. It really felt like this team had hit their stride and like they were making a push for a top 25 ranking, really kind of like solidifying a tournament bid regardless of the Pac-12 tournament. And you drop a game to Cal, you get swept by ASU. You lose to Arizona as well, despite it being a really close game. It's like, those are 3 losses that are going to stick with you, like, regardless. Like, they're not fun. But then you have this one against UCLA where it's just this really kind of emphatic reaction with the students storming the court. And you're just like, okay, we know how well we can play. And I think this is something Dana Altman has really touched on. Like, we were talking about his media availability earlier this week, where he was just kind of like, it's really frustrating, as a coaching staff being like, okay, we can hang with the top dogs, but we're also losing to Arizona State. I don't think he said those exact words, and I don't want to put words in his mouth, but it was definitely like
paraphrasing.
Yeah. as a fan, you kind of just get stuck in this like moment of like, why do we do so well against the good teams and struggle against the teams we're supposed to be? But going forward, 3 games left, 2 games against the Washington schools. I think this UCLA one is really going to help redirect that momentum from that downswing that they were on. And I think, especially it's like being able to win with Will Richardson only finishing like 3 of 13 from the field is also going to be a huge boon to their confidence, because it's like Richardson very rarely has nights that bad. Richardson is usually the guy you can rely on to, get you 20 points on like near 50% shooting. And so, with Jacob Young and, Devion Harmon in particular last night, like, he's had great games, but this was like one of those games where I just felt like he just seemed so confident, like regardless of the context. Like he was really just doing everything for Oregon last night, regardless of like scoring, defense, passing. Like he was just, I don't think he really set a foot wrong last night. And so hopefully going forward, relying on that trio of Young, Richardson, and Harmon, getting them all performing at the same time, I really think this team can hang with potentially anybody. We've seen it against Arizona a week ago, and we've seen it with UCLA these past 2 matchups. But I think it's weird because, like, I'm going to say, like, they have the potential to do this, but then we've also seen this team lose to Cal. So it's, you kind of get stuck going back and forth on, like, where they can really realistically end up.
Yeah, I love hearing about Devion Harmon's confidence because that's going to be huge for this Oregon team if they really want to reach their potential. He was talking in the post game about just how Richardson was able to impact the game even when he wasn't scoring. He did finish with 11 points, which was tied for the third most on the team, with Jacob Young finishing with 14. But to talk about Richardson and his impact, aside from scoring, he had 4 assists and 2 steals as well. Imagine he'd like to have the 5 turnovers back. That was a team high, and that Dan Altman talked about how that kind of, went against a little bit of their momentum. But, one of the biggest things I wanted to talk about with you, Billy, that we kind of talked about off the top here was that atmosphere in Matthew Knight Arena. You said that was kind of like an all-time Oregon sports moment for you. And Dan Altman was pretty quick to praise the student section in particular, and just the crowd at Matthew Knight for the turnout and just the energy that they helped provide the team with Thursday night. But at the same time, he also said that this really hasn't been, what we've been used to the atmosphere being, on a consistent basis over, throughout the years, talking about, we have recruits coming in to see us. We have ESPN in town to, showcase, what makes Eugene so special. And quite frankly, he was kind of paraphrasing to say that it wasn't like it's used to be. It's not kind of going to cut it. But at the same time, he was quick to say, we haven't been holding up our end of the bargain. We haven't been putting a solid product out there on the court. So I thought that was really big of him to say. And I think it kind of shows, it serves rather as some good context to, that atmosphere that we heard about and saw in some videos. I wasn't there. So wanted to hear your experience with that.
Yeah. And, I think there's a lot of different reasons for why last night was the way it was. I wouldn't be surprised if, Sunday night, I'll be at that game, not covering for Ducks Digest, but I'll be at the game for a student workshop thing. But, I wouldn't be surprised if it kind of carries over to Sunday or Saturday night as well. And I think a lot of that has to do with these are the last 2 home games. A lot is riding on these games. If these were just kind of like any other team, the Cal game in particular, right? I don't want to just keep coming back to that and harping on it, but the turnout for the Cal game was I don't have the exact numbers, but it wasn't near as high as the UCLA game. And a lot of that comes down to the competition isn't as exciting, but part of me begins to wonder, had the turnout been better, had the fan support been better, how would that game have gone? But I think, knowing how much was riding on this game, specifically when it came to tournament hopes, I know, Lenardi just released his bracketology for this week, and Oregon is
I think they're still a bubble team.
They're still. Though. Yeah, and so, I think there's a lot of this could potentially be the thing that turns the season around, right? There was a lot of fan investment in this, and so I think Saturday night, when it's senior night and you're playing against USC, a team that Oregon just doesn't like in sports in general, I wouldn't be surprised if that fan atmosphere carries over. And I really, really do think that, the team very clearly feeds off of it. They really, really enjoy having that support. And, unconditional support is something that's kind of hard to ask of fans. I think that's just how I've always been with my teams. I don't think I've missed, a Ducks football game since I started coming here. But besides that, I really think it'll carry over to Saturday. I would be shocked if the Saturday turnout isn't as hype or, if not more hype than it was last night.
And that's one of the benefits that comes with, being located in a college town, Billy, is that, everyone in that town and Eugene, rallies around the program. So that's why it's a little shocking to kind of see the atmosphere and turnout be what it's been like this year. But, to that point, to talk about the women's turnout, I mean, I was at that Stanford Oregon game, and that was huge turnout. I can't remember who they were playing, but there was a game on Super Bowl Sunday. Was that the Stanford game? Am I just totally getting everything
that was
around?
Before, I think. I'm
okay.
I'm going to try to find it right now.
But either way, there was a game on Super Bowl Sunday at 1 p.m., and there was still a great turnout at Matt Knight for the Oregon women's team. So great to see the atmosphere really kind of rise to the occasion for the men. They're going to be welcoming USC to town this weekend. Oregon is listed as one of the next 4 out in Joe Lenardi's bracketology that you were referencing earlier there, Billy. So I guess heading into this game, I just look ahead and wind down a little bit. What are you going to kind of have your eye on with, the Trojans coming off a 94-91 win over Oregon State that took them a little bit longer than they had hoped for, going to double overtime out there in Corvallis?
Mainly it's just going to come down to like Davian Harmon, if he can continue his performance from last night. And then if Will Richardson can really like return to form, because we know Will Richardson will have these kind of like rough nights every now and then, and he usually bounces back immediately. But on top of that, like, I really want to see if Eric Williams can like maintain this like really, really good, or if he can continue like the really good streak of shooting he had against UCLA, because there have been moments like there's a really infamous game earlier this season where he was like 3 of 16 from the floor. I think it was actually against UCLA. And then last night, like he was picking his shots better. He wasn't forcing shots when he didn't need to. Maintaining that ball movement as well is also really big, right? I forget exactly who said it, but it was one of the TV announcers was like, if Oregon allows themselves, it was actually against Arizona. That's what it was. If Oregon allows themselves to like stall and one person to dominate a possession, it becomes so much harder for them to score, because they're not like, forcing open looks. They're not, they're not like getting open looks. They're just kind of like forcing these needless isolation plays. And so I think if the ball continues to move well, if Will Richardson is able to return back to form, and if Davian Harmon and Jacob Young can kind of maintain this momentum, I think like kind of getting those 4 players playing really well as like if Kepnon can come off the bench and do what he did last night, it's really going to bode well for Saturday, because this is a USC team Oregon has beat earlier this season. This is a USC team that is not been as highly ranked or has been as highly touted as they were earlier in the season. And so, I think USC is going to be really wanting to bounce back from that Oregon State win, despite it being, it
was an ugly win.
Back.
They would probably say.
It was an ugly one. But I think Oregon is really going to be like, okay, like our tournament hopes are riding on this. If we can win this game, as well as like finishing out the season against Washington and Washington State, going into the Pac-12 tournament with 4 straight wins, I think not only are the tournament chances a lot better, but like they just will look so much better, not only to the committee, but to themselves. And I think a lot of that is what it is. It's like, it comes down to a belief in themselves where, if they doubt themselves, like you can kind of see them on the court, right? Like I mentioned Davian Harmon's confidence last night just seeming sky high, like the best I've seen all season. And so that was another thing, is like you were talking about Richardson's kind of tangible impact despite not shooting terribly well. Regardless of what happened, like he was hyping up his guys. He was like dapping them up after every play, patting them on the back, being like, all right, guys, we got this. And so I think if they're just able to kind of maintain a level head going into Saturday and onward throughout the rest of the season, it's going to be a good run for them.
Like you mentioned, USC hoping to look a little bit sharper than they did against the Beavers. Oregon got that win down in LA, 69-79 earlier in the season. So I think it bodes a lot better for them getting USC at home, coming off of a big win. Feels like they have some momentum. They're healthy. The leaders are really emerging, it feels like, for the Ducks. So, I think things are looking good for them to take care of business this weekend against the USC Trojans. Billy, before we get out of here, where can people find more of you, whether it be Twitter or any other platforms? Want to give you a chance to plug that.
I'm just at B Spotz pretty much everywhere. At BSPOTZ. Good thing about having a unique nickname or a unique last name is that you get free real estate on practically every social media platform. My Instagram is pretty boring. You can feel free to follow me there, but my Twitter is usually where I'm most active. I'm usually going to be at a basketball game or just tweeting out Wordle scores, because that's been my obsession over the last 2 months. So
cool. So that's where you can find more of Billy. I haven't gotten on the Wordle hype. What's all the hype about with Wordle? Because I see it on my timeline all the time.
Well, so it was made by an Oregon grad, which is pretty cool. But
I didn't know that.
Yeah, it's just a fun I like word games. I grew up playing crosswords and Sudoku and stuff like that, and kind of just waking up and doing that. Just a good start to your day. Kind of forcing me to go through my vocabulary. I think I even I forget exactly what word it was, but I was just oh, I should use that word more, because it's just a nice word and it works really well. And so it's definitely kind of helped me kind of expand my vocabulary more, as well as just kind of it's a fun word game. It's a fun brain teaser in the morning. It wakes me up.
All right, you know where to find more of Billy Spotz. He's one of our main basketball reporters over on Ducks Digest. Go read his work. He has a recap of the UCLA game, and then he's also doing previews and other recaps for games for us. If you guys want to find more of me, you can follow me on Twitter at mtorresports. If you're watching this on YouTube at Oregon Football Max Torres, kindly ask that you do me a quick favor, take a second out of your day and hit that subscribe and like button for me. It's a tremendous help. And then you can also find us on Apple Podcasts as well as Spotify. That's just the Ducks Dish podcast. That's what we're rocking with. And then I just made a new Twitter for the podcast, just at Ducks Dish. If you want to send us a question, you can email us at ducksdishpodcast@gmail.com. So just some ways you can find us, and then definitely make sure to check out ducksdigest.com for all of our written content. We're getting more spring football previews coming out here, as that's just about 2 weeks away now. So we love football season, but we got to show some love to the other sports as well. So that's why I was glad to bring Billy on. Thanks for coming on, Billy, and thank you everyone else for tuning in. We will catch you guys in the next episode.